The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitical Ghost. I am your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of bass Patrick Henry. Today is May 8th, 2026. This is Badlands Media. Welcome and thanks for joining us. Interesting song choice, right? Daft Punk is the group. Interesting backstory they have if you aren't familiar with them. I think they're from like the late 80s, early 90s originally, and then they've kind of had some resurgence. But two young French kids back in the day started on like the underground techno whatever party scene, doing like the DJ kind of stuff. And then as they started to make a name for themselves, one of their fathers, I believe, was in like the music industry, not like a big name, just some whatever mid-level executive, but he knew that the industry was all about stealing the rights of the artists, like over their music, and that's how they controlled the artists and basically stole all their wealth and stole all their power and control. So he told them that he negotiated, I guess, for them, but made sure that whenever they signed a contract, they always maintained the control over their music and the rights over their music, which ended up being that made them very unique in the entire music industry. They were probably the only artists that actually ever did that. At least back then. And then they also did this kind of Trumpomania thing, like narrative, kind of silly, but, they came out this story that, their music studio exploded or something, and they were reborn as robots. Very strange, almost transhumanist, which is weird. But then they started appearing, this is really early in their career, kind of a gimmick, almost like a pro wrestling gimmick. But they started appearing as like with these helmets on, like as robots. And the benefit for them long term was twofold. Obviously, this is what they look like. So they got their the rights of their music, the control over the rights of their music, and then they got to maintain their anonymity. So even to this day, people don't know what they look like. I have no idea what they look like. And so once having the control over the rights of their music, I think Kanye West, like 20 years ago, sampled one of their songs. And then they were able, like their song's been sampled by a bunch of other artists. It's been used in sparingly in commercials or movies or whatever. And then they came out with an album like in 2013 with some big artists that gave them a resurgence, and they got to, I don't know, they got in the Music Hall of Fame or whatever it is. But the narrative was interesting because they pretended to be these robots for a while, and then they came out with an album called Human After All. And then they started, even though they kept the robot helmets on in order to maintain their anonymity, they started incorporating like orchestra and like classical music, and they started doing like funk and jazz and all these other different styles, and got less into the techno stuff and more into like whatever organic kind of music. Interesting idea though, because they got all the benefits of a successful career in quote unquote mainstream music. They never had to sacrifice their anonymity. So I read an interview with them like 10 or 15 years ago where they are able to just walk. They live in Paris or France or whatever. They're able just to walk down the street and nobody knows who they are. So they get to live a normal life as like a normal person. Nobody knows who they are. And they also never use their platform for like politics or like to promote like the cabal or any sorts of like demonic ideas like that. Even the transhuman stuff, they kind of came full circle on. Kind of a based story as far as the music industry can be based. So anyway, and I guess that's a little bit relevant because of this whole alien disclosure thing now, because that seems to be what they were kind of into to some extent. They also had some songs and lyrics that, spoke to the control mechanisms that the music industry and other things have over society. So anyway, the alien stuff I haven't really looked at. I've seen some of the clips. I'll leave that to Jordan Sather to break down. I'm sure he'll have some great intel on it. Maybe Zach will as well. It's not really my wheelhouse. Interesting stuff. So we'll see what comes of it. But anyway, could be a distraction. Could lead to something greater. Maybe we'll get some technological disclosure. But let's kind of jump into things. And by the way, this is being pre-recorded. It's only 1:00 right now. So I'm delaying the start of the show. I got a lot of stuff going on this weekend. Friend's wedding, Mother's Day, kids ballet recital. So I got a lot to get to this afternoon. So I wanted to record this a little early. I'm pushing, which is why I pushed back the start of the shuttle 3. So that explains that. But let's jump into this story. Because this seems like a bigger deal than I think people are making of it. Lawyers at a M&A law firm, which is a mergers and acquisition law firm, among 30 charged by U.S. in insider trading scheme. It says this broke, I guess, 2 days ago, but it was updated yesterday. It says prosecutors allege lawyers access law firm networks to steal merger info for trading. Law firms at issue include Latham and Watkins and Goodwin. Proctor. Scheme involved nearly 30 merger and acquisition deals, prosecutors say. This is in Boston. Federal prosecutors on Wednesday announced they charged 30 people with participating in an insider trading scheme in which attorneys passed tips on merger deals to a network of people who traded on the information. So that would be people in finance. 19 people were arrested, including attorney Nicolo Norafshan, who federal prosecutors in Boston said was at the center of a decade-long scheme that generated tens of millions of dollars. Norafshan, who graduated from Yale Law School, worked from 2013 to 2023 at law firms including Sidley Austin, Latham and Watkins, and Goodwin Proctor. Those law firms were not identified by name in the indictment, but it described corporate deals that the firms had previously announced they worked on. Prosecutors in the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, which filed a related civil case, said Norafshan and New York personal injury attorney Robert Yadgaroff orchestrated the alleged scheme, which involved nearly 30 merger and acquisition deals. Prosecutors say Norafshan and others accessed law firms' confidential documents about unannounced pending mergers. Norafshan and Yadgaroff then provided inside information to a network of traders and middlemen for kickbacks, authorities say. Quote, the trading on unannounced financial news alleged here not only violated the securities laws, but it also took advantage of the special access and ethical duties that come with a law license, U.S. Attorney Leah Foley said in a statement. Norafchan, who lives in Los Angeles, and other defendants face charges, including securities fraud. 2 defendants are in Russia and Israel and are considered fugitives, prosecutors say. 9 others pleaded guilty in cases dating to 2024 that were unsealed on Wednesday. They include Gabriel Gershowitz, who had worked at the law firms Wheel, Gottschall, and Manges, DLA Piper, and Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, according to his LinkedIn profile. Authorities say Gershowitz attended college with Norafcham and Yadgarov, and beginning in 2019, supplied them with non-public information from his employers. He pleaded guilty in February 2025. Eric Rosen, a lawyer for Norafchan, and E. Scott Morvillo, Gershowitz's attorney, declined to comment. A lawyer for Yadgarov said could not be immediately identified. Prosecutors described the law firms in the case as victims. Wachtel, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz confirmed that a former lawyer was allegedly involved in the case. It said it cooperated with prosecutors. Latham and Watkins confirmed it too was a victim and said, quote, the conduct as alleged would reflect a serious violation of our robust policies and procedures. Goodwin said it was deeply disappointed in what allegedly occurred. Among the deals caught up in the scheme was Amazon.com Inc.'s proposal in 2022 to acquire iRobot, which the companies later abandoned in face of antitrust regulator opposition. At the time, Norafcham was employed by Goodwin Proctor, which advised iRobot. According to the indictment, he viewed confidential materials about the deal on the law firm's document management system while quote unquote on leave from the firm. And we have the actual indictment here from the U.S. Attorney's Office. 30 individuals charged in global insider trading scheme, netting tens of millions in illicit profits. We don't need to read through the entire thing, but there is some really interesting stuff in here. So it says 19 defendants were arrested today and will make appearances in federal court in Los Angeles, California. This is Wednesday. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and New York, among other locations. 2 defendants located in Russia and Israel are considered fugitives. The first indictment charges the following 16 defendants with 2 counts of conspiracy to commit securities fraud, 2 counts of securities fraud, and 1 count of money laundering conspiracy. And they list the 16 people here. So that would be the first indictment. And then this is what the actual indictment looks like. It looks like this was filed actually back on April 28th, 2026. And then, it gets into all the technical language of the indictment. Let's get back to the DOJ page. And if you look at these names, one thing you'll notice is that all of these names, there's 2 characteristics that all of these names seem to share in common. One is that they appear to be Jewish. I mean, that's ostensibly what they are. It doesn't mean they're Jewish, but these names are uniquely what I would describe as Eastern European Israeli. I mean, that's what they look like. A few examples: Yisrael Horowitz, I think he was named in that. God is Israelov. I mean, I'm butchering these names, but David Ostroff. I mean, that sounds Eastern European, right? Remember, Europe. I mean, Israel was settled by Ukrainians, by Eastern Europeans, which is why many people in Israel have Eastern European names. They sound many of them sound Russian because they were Russian. Baruch Igal Hatanian, that's definitely sounds Jewish. Brian Finsterzob, Gabriel Silverstein. Says, all right, a second indictment charges 5 defendants with 2 counts of conspiracy to commit securities fraud, 2 counts of securities fraud, and 1 count of money laundering conspiracy. Again, all their names do look either Jewish or Eastern European or maybe both. Now, it lists all their their current places of residence. Most of them live in New York or Florida. This guy, Ilya Gavrilov, lives in Russia, it looks like. And then this is this God Israelov. I mean, these names are so hard to pronounce. It says he lives in Israel. So you have at least one Israeli involved in this, or at least one person living in Israel. It says Malik and Vinsky, who were in the second group, are also charged with obstruction of justice. McCary is also charged with making false declarations before a grand jury, and Malik, Rudella, and Vinsky are charged with making false statements to law enforcement. Charges against 9 other defendants for security fraud conspiracy were also unsealed today. The government's investigation is ongoing. And then the quote is, "Our country's financial markets and professional firms should be free from the rampant fraud and breaches of duty that these charges allege," said U.S. Attorney Leah Foley. "The trading on unannounced financial news alleged here not only violates security laws, but also took advantage of the special access and ethical duties that come with the law license. If the American people believe that trading is only for the connected, they will keep their investment and retirement savings out of the markets, which will hurt our economy. Today's charges, the result of a years-long investigation with our law enforcement partners, are part of my office's ongoing efforts to ensure a level playing field for all investors." And so it's just some of the details. This is from Boston. Okay. It says, as alleged in the charging documents, Nicolo Naravchan, who we've already talked about. I'm just seeing if they have any more specifics here. I've skimmed through this a few times, but okay. So then down here, because we're going to get into more details on it. I got more connections to make on this. This isn't just a one-off. But down here, and this is all part of the same DOJ document, they have an excerpt from a group text. It says, as alleged, the defendants and other co-conspirators sought to keep law enforcement from learning about the scheme by, among other means, using burner phones, encrypted applications, coded language, including about quote-unquote flights, and in-person meetups where conspirators turned off their electronic devices or put them elsewhere before communicating with each other. For example, on or about June 7, 2022, Nicolo Naravchan, while on a quote-unquote leave of absence from a law firm where he worked, allegedly viewed confidential materials on the law firm's document management system regarding a potential acquisition of iRobot, which was a deal that he did not work on. Shortly thereafter, on or about June 16th, 2022, Simon Furtserzob allegedly purchased iRobot securities while in possession of MNPI, and MNPI, I believe, stands for material non-public information. So he was in possession of material non-public information. That would be information that lawyers would have while these deals are being negotiated privately, right? On or about June 16th, 2022, and continuing through on or about July 8th, 2022, Silverstein and Simon Furtserzob allegedly exchanged the following coded messages before lapsing into an express discussion of the deal. And so Finsterzob. So Finsterzob says, I'm going to call him just Finster because his name is too difficult, and Silverstein. And I want to read some of these to you because this is pretty interesting. Finster, we cannot miss this boat. How's the rabbi? And then Silverstein responds, he's stable. And Finster says, is he scheduled for surgery? And then Silverstein responds, we are still waiting for the doctor to check if it's still needed. And then Finster responds, now I'm confused and worried at the same time. And Silverstein says, you shouldn't be worried. And Finster says, well, have you gotten through to anyone at the hospital? Any chance you can find out today how the rabbi is feeling? And Silverstein says, unfortunately, nothing. Finster says, dude, that's scary. And Silverstein says, yeah. Finster then says, should I tell people to pull out? And Silverstein says, stagnant, no movement on the situation. Finster says, find out if we should bail. Now, that must be when, like they're saying in this document, it says they went from this coded language about this rabbi needing surgery to suddenly they just started like openly talking about, yeah, should we pull out? Should we pull out? Meaning pulling out of the investment because they had bought a bunch of securities in these companies that were about to complete a merger acquisition, which whenever that happens, the stock of the company skyrockets, right? And you make a ton of money. Anyone who's a shareholder makes a ton of money. So they continue. Finster says, so what should I advise people? Silverstein says, are they even? Finster says, and I think he means like, are they even or are they in the black or the red? Meaning like, have they bought stock that's gone down? Have they bought stock where the price has gone up? Referring to the iRobot stock, I assume. And Finster says, I could find out, but based on the current price, I would assume so. Silverstein says, so pull, we might be back at it shortly. So he's advising these people, this group of people, to sell their stock because the merger is not imminently happening, I would assume. Finster then says, I have to remember to tell people tomorrow, had the deal died or can we still be hopeful? Any way to find out? Silverstein says, still be hopeful. I will speak within the day. Finster says, I can't tell you how badly I need this. Defendants and other co-conspirators also allegedly traded in brokerage accounts in the names of shell companies and other corporate entities, enlisted others to trade on behalf of co-conspirators, traded in others' brokerage accounts, and traded in foreign brokerage accounts, all to try to evade the detection of U.S. securities regulators and law enforcement. Conspirators allegedly transferred proceeds in kickback payments in cash and through intermediaries and shell companies in locations like Panama and Switzerland. At times, such payments were allegedly disguised as purported quote-unquote loans or business transactions. The charge of conspiracy to commit Title 18 securities fraud provides for a sentence of up to 25 years in prison. And it just goes on to spell out the penalties these guys are facing. It's a bunch of prison time and fines. It says sentences are imposed by a federal judge based upon the U.S. sentencing guidelines and statutes which govern the determination of a sentence to a criminal case. And so what's interesting is that the SEC has filed a concurrent civil suit against them, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm definitely not a legal expert, but I do have a little bit of experience in that world. And from my understanding, I mean, what I do know is that a civil lawsuit, the benefit of a civil lawsuit, is that it has a far more expansive discovery. Like you can go out and grab a lot more information from the person on the other side. Like if you're suing somebody and it gets accepted by the courts and then you go to discovery, you can grab a lot more information, their communications, their banking information, whatever it is that's relevant to the case, than a criminal probe can. A criminal probe, it has to be very, very narrow. The prosecutor has to know exactly what they're looking for. I need this text message on this date that was going to this person, right? And if that doesn't exist, if they get the date wrong, they don't get anything, right? So a civil suit can be very beneficial to run either concurrently or before a criminal suit, because the criminal suit can then piggyback off of whatever is found via discovery in the civil suit. So anyway, but in a civil suit, I think you need 50% of the jury to acquit, whereas in a criminal suit, just one juror can get you an acquittal. So here's that second lawsuit they mentioned, or not lawsuit, the second criminal filing of those five guys. And it looks like it's money laundering conspiracy, false statements, obstruction of justice, securities fraud, aiding and abetting, forfeiture allegations, money laundering, forfeiture allegations. So yeah, there's a lot here. Now, what makes this interesting is, like, let's make some connections here, because there are definitely some connections. Here is from Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. So this is like 7 months ago. 8 members of a global insider trading network charged with securities fraud and money laundering offenses. Defendants allegedly traded on material non-public information in advance of more than a dozen corporate announcements, generating tens of millions of dollars in illicit profits, laundering the proceeds. Again, this is Boston, so the same office, right? These names appear to be more Asian, right? Ziggy, Christopher Dong, Julian Lee, like they're based in Hong Kong, they're based in France, they're based in Singapore, they're based in the UAE. This first guy, Sami Fadi Kouaja of France and of the United Arab Emirates. The second guy, Iyama Safi of the United Arab Emirates in Germany. So that's interesting. And so I went to go look, and again, this is Leah Foley, the same prosecutor. What's interesting about this is that I went to go find connections of, like, are these two things connected? And there seems to be several connections between these two cases. Let's see. They both involve merger and acquisition related MNPI, the material non-public information, with kickbacks. They involve recruitment from across the world, so it's like international stuff, like international network operations, including Europe, the U.S., the Middle East, and Asia. They used middlemen and traders to kind of deceptive tactics to kind of hide their behavior. They use burner phones. They use encrypted apps, coded language, shell companies, intermediaries, cash, distinguished payments, disguised payments. I'm sorry, sham loans, business transactions, and they were both indicted by the same people, the same office. So we don't know if they're directly connected, but they could be. What's interesting is that going back to the original story, they mentioned that there was there were sealed indictments that were unsealed. So this one right here says, this is from the original story. It says charges against 9 other defendants for security fraud conspiracy were also unsealed today. So that means that those people were charged previously, right? And then their indictments were unsealed. It's unclear what that means, like whether these people were, did these people flip on their friends? That seems to me like that's the question I have. We'll probably learn all this as this comes to trial. We'll learn all this information. But the same thing appears to have happened in this other case from November, where there was these were unsealed. These were sealed indictments. So a superseding indictment unsealed to bring securities fraud, money laundering charges against 8 foreign nationals who were alleged members of an insider trading network. And then so here's the superseding indictment, right? So this is interesting. This is really, really interesting. Now, let's go back to the original story, because I just wanted to point out that there appears to be a pattern here. There appears to be a pattern here that's happening from this District of Massachusetts office, this Boston-based office. Now, one of the firms that's involved is this Latham firm. Where was it? And these firms are headquartered in Massachusetts, or at least one of them is. And it's... Where's the name of that firm? Okay. And the reason I wanted to bring up the name of the firm is because it was Goodwin Proctor was one of them, and then the other one was... Sorry, I had to close all my tabs. I started recording this, and then the lagging was so bad because I had like 100 tabs open that I had to close all the tabs out and then hit restart the show over the recording because the lagging was so bad. So I closed all of it down, and I'm just trying to go through my history. Latham Watkins, this firm. Okay, so Latham Watkins is one of these firms, and the DOJ is saying, yeah, this firm was a victim, and they're saying they're a victim too. Here's where it gets interesting, is this story. From last year. You might remember this. So Trump says, this is from April 11th, 2025. This is from 13 months ago. Trump says 5 more law firms agree to pro bono work to avoid punitive executive orders. 2 of the law firms is called Wallader and Latham and Watkins, among major firms, to provide $600 million in pro bono work to Trump-backed causes. I need to archive this because, of course, I do. Everything's behind a paywall these days. So it says Donald Trump said on Friday that 5 major law firms reached agreements to together provide his administration $600 million in pro bono legal work, among other terms, to avoid executive orders punishing them, a significant capitulation to the president as he attacks the legal profession. The 5 firms, Kirkland and Ellis, Latham and Watkins, Allen Overy, Shearman, Sterling, Simon Thatcher, and Bartlett, and Cadwalader, Wickersham, and Taft, are among the most prestigious and recognized firms in the U.S. Trump's announcement on Friday on Truth Social means he has secured a total of $940 million in pro bono work from some of the most powerful law firms in the U.S. The orders come as Trump's attack on the legal profession has divided the most prestigious firms in the U.S. More than 500 firms signed an amicus brief last week, in support of a legal challenge to executive orders punishing the firm Perkins Coie. Remember them? But many of the country's biggest firms, including those that reached agreements announced on Friday, were conspicuously absent. Four of the firms, and it lists the same ones that we just mentioned, agreed to pledge $125 million each in pro bono work to causes backed by the Trump administration. And then two of the other firms said it would dedicate $100 million. Cadwalader is a former firm of Todd Blanche, who resigned his partnership there to represent Trump in a criminal case. In criminal cases, when the firm would not take on Trump as a client. Blanche is now the deputy attorney general, the number 2 official at the Department of Justice. Now, of course, he is the attorney general, right? Or at least the acting attorney general. So basically, Trump gets charged with these criminal indictments back during the Biden administration. We all remember that. I guess Trump approaches Cadwalader, if I'm saying that right, a law firm, to represent him. They refuse to represent him. And so Todd Blanche, one of the partners there, resigns from the partnership, which is a big deal. I mean, you make partner at a firm, that means you are part owner in the firm. So he resigns, I assume gives up his ownership stake in the firm, right? And then he goes to represent Trump on his own in these criminal cases. And then now he's the deputy attorney general. So for those who were not confident in Todd Blanche, a lot of people haven't been because of specific reasons. That should give you some confidence that he basically gave up his professional career to go represent Trump in these criminal cases back during the Biden administration, and then came in as the deputy attorney general. So that is really interesting that one of these firms where these guys were working, the 30 guys who were just indicted, they were some of them were working at this firm. That is really, really interesting. Now let's go look at. Well, I guess there's actually another story I wanted to look at, was the Wall Street Journal. This is from June 1st, 2025. So last year. It says the law firms that appeased Trump and angered their clients. Got to archive this one as well. And again, just be patient with me because I got to reopen all these tabs that I had to close down for the sake of not freezing up the stream. Okay, so a recent luncheon at Cipriani in Midtown Manhattan, a top lawyer for Citadel delivered a message to leaders of some of the country's biggest law firms. Brooke Cuccinella told them that the hedge fund company likes to work with law firms that aren't afraid of a fight. Cuccinella, head of litigation and regulatory inquiries at the business headed by Republican megadonor Ken Griffin, made no mention of politics, but some of the lawyers in attendance took her remarks as reference to a controversy that has been roiling the legal industry. Some of the listed attendees worked for firms that had cut deals with the White House to avoid punitive executive orders by President Trump. Others were at law firms that had gone to court to fight them. Support for the law firms that didn't make deals has been growing inside the offices of corporate executives. At least 11 big companies are moving work away from law firms that settled with the administration or are giving or intend to give more business to firms that have been targeted but refuse to strike deals, according to general counsels at those companies and other people familiar with those decisions. Among them are technology giant Oracle, right? Investment bank Morgan Stanley, an airline, and a pharmaceutical company. Microsoft expressed reservations about working with a firm that struck a deal, and another such firm stopped representing McDonald's in a case a few months before a scheduled trial. In interviews, general counsels expressed concern about whether they could trust law firms that struck deals to fight for them in court and in negotiating big deals if they weren't willing to stand up for themselves against Trump. The general counsel of a manufacturer of medical supplies said that if firms facing White House pressure, quote, don't have a hard line, they don't have any line at all. Since last February, Trump has issued a half dozen executive orders that direct agencies to remove law firm security clearances, limit access to federal buildings, and remove their clients' government contracts, citing connections between those firms and the president's enemies. Trump has said many law firms have weaponized the legal system to hamper the work of the administration. 4 firms, Jenner Block, Perkins Coie, Wilmer Hale, and Sussman Godfrey, elected to fight the administration in court. But leaders of other law firms thought such litigation would destabilize their businesses and send clients running for the exits. In March, one of those firms, Paul Weiss, surprised the industry by reaching a deal with the White House to rescind the order in exchange for providing pro bono work for causes supported by the administration. everyone probably remembers this. Did it freeze? Nope, I think we're good. Wait, I'm trying to get this open, but y'all may remember Paul Weiss. Paul Weiss, I think, was the first person to announce, the first entity to announce that they were going to be working with Trump. So it says, leaders of the firm that struck deals with the White House said they did so in part to protect their clients who were at risk of losing their government contracts as a result of the White House's executive orders against the law firms. Not long after Latham struck a deal in April, the firm's chair, Robert Trobman, met with Morgan Stanley's chief legal counsel, Eric Grossman. People familiar with the meeting said Grossman heard him out about the firm's reasoning for striking a deal and acknowledged that companies have to do what is best for themselves. Soon after that meeting, Grossman and other Morgan Stanley lawyers communicated to law firms targeted by the White House that hadn't signed deals that they were looking to give them new business. The people familiar with the meeting said Paul Weiss, a 12,000 lawyer firm that works on many big corporate deals, was one of the first firms targeted by the Trump executive order. The general counsel of one major financial firm said her anxiety grew by the day when Paul Weiss didn't sue quickly after being hit with the order. When she heard the firm struck a deal at the White House, she said she felt, quote unquote, physically ill. What does that mean exactly? A top legal executive at another company said she called partners at Paul Weiss before it cut its deals to reassure the firm she would remain loyal, even though doing so risked millions in government contracts. She was shocked when the firm chair, Brad Karp, announced the deal, she said, and her company has plans to move work away from Paul Weiss. The day after Paul Weiss struck its deal, female general counsels gathered for a conference in Washington. During a panel at the Women's General Counsel Network event, a lawyer stood up and said her company had taken steps that morning to pull its business from Paul Weiss. The lawyer received thunderous applause. About 2 weeks later, McDonald's told a court that star Paul Weiss lawyer Loretta Lynch was withdrawing as its attorney in a high-profile lawsuit accusing the fast food giant of discrimination against black-owned media companies. Lynch, who had served as Attorney General under former President Barack Obama, had been involved with the case for several years. It is unusual for companies to shake up representation close to trial. Karp, this is Brad Karp, Paul Weiss's chair and a longtime Democratic donor, has said he made a difficult choice that was necessary to save the firm. In an internal memo, he called the executive order an existential crisis, saying the firm risked losing partners and clients if it sued to block the order. He has told others that handling the executive order was more difficult than managing the firm through the coronavirus pandemic. Firms that struck deals hope to find solidarity with the numbers. In the country's largest firm, Kirkland & Ellis, which had about $9 billion in revenue last year, lobbied its peers to sign deals. Trump and the law firms have only discussed limited details about what pro bono work they have agreed to undertake for the administration. General counsel said that it makes it hard for companies to know where conflict of interest might arise. Trump has taken an expansive view of what is required, openly musing about enlisting the firms to help negotiate trade deals or revive the coal industry. How about that, guys? So maybe Trump has been using all these people to negotiate all of these deals that he's doing around the world, and all of like the big disruption we're seeing in the energy markets, in the minerals market, in the commodities trading asset market. These law firms must be the ones negotiating these deals for Trump, and they're doing it for free because Trump has them by the balls. In April, the General Counsel of Microsoft, John Palmer, discussed with leaders of Latham his concerns about the deal the firm had struck, including how it could affect Latham's ability to represent Microsoft, especially before the government. According to people familiar with the discussion, on April 17th, Microsoft put its concerns in writing, removing Latham from a list of about a dozen preferred firms that it has vetted to handle outside legal work, according to a document described to the Journal. About 2 weeks later, after a series of conversations with Latham's leaders that addressed concerns about potential conflicts, Microsoft returned the law firm to his list of preferred firms. Quote, the Latham agreement created concerns about potential conflict of interest issues that could affected the firm's ability to represent Microsoft. Microsoft's Palmer said in a written statement. Latham's leader, he said, provided the strong assurances we needed to address our concerns. I'm just seeing if there's a few other things I think I wanted to hit on this. The law firms named in this article declined to publicly discuss client matters. Leaders of firms that struck deals said their business have continued to thrive and that they have received calls from clients supportive of the deals. They have said the agreements won't force them to take on pro bono work that would create conflicts with existing clients. On the website touting the law firm's the firm's lawsuit, Jenner and Block said because it says that judges have struck down orders against Wilmer Hale, Jenner and Block, and Perkins Coie, and the order against Sussman Godfrey has been temporary. Block judges have said the executive orders amounted to unconstitutional retaliation against the firms. On a website touting the firm's lawsuit, Jenner and Block said relenting on the White House would mean compromising our ability to zealously advocate for all of our clients and capitulating to unconstitutional government coercion, which is simply not in our DNA. Okay, so what is interesting here, let's just lay this all out, and then I want to get back to the original story, is that one of these law firms, Latham, which is at the center of all this, it appears, they have a bunch of people working for them who have now just been indicted 2 days ago because they were going into the firm's database, taking out information, material on upcoming mergers and acquisitions, giving it to their banker friends in the finance industry, right? And then their banker friends were investing, were buying securities, buying stock in these companies before the merger and acquisition was publicly announced, after which the stock would explode, would go up, and they'd make a ton of money. That's like insider trading 101, right? So what I wonder is not that, this coercion, quote unquote, that Trump is doing to these law firms. And I need to go familiarize myself fully with the original executive order. I remember reading it a year ago, but I haven't read it since then. But what I think happened is that these law firms were engaged in a bunch of illegal stuff. I think they were doing some really, really nasty stuff. They were obviously using security clearances to get information probably for their clients. And they were probably doing a lot of insider trading, I would suspect, like what these people were just indicted for. And basically Trump strong-armed them and said, all right, in exchange for not going after y'all, you're going to do a bunch of pro bono work for me. I'm going to put all of you to work for free. You're going to negotiate all these trade deals for me, and you're going to do the best job you possibly can. If you don't do the best job you possibly can, there's probably going to be consequences, right? Some of these law firms says 4 of them say, including Perkins Coie, which is at the center of Russiagate, they say, no, we're not playing ball. Pound sand. All of these major corporations, right, and banks, Morgan Stanley being one of them, McDonald's being another one, that is fascinating to me. And we need to see this play out a little more. But going back to this original article, this original press release from the DOJ, you might look at this and say, okay, so what does this have to do with the price of eggs? Why are you talking about this, Ghost? Well, the fact that these guys right here, these 16, and I would even say 21, they all appear to be, number one, Jewish. They all appear to be Israeli. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if all of these people have joint citizenship, dual citizenship with Israel. Like even this guy, Ilya Gavrilov, of Russia, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a Russian Israeli, right? All these other guys, their names would indicate to me, I would assume that they have Israeli citizenship, or at least have connections to Israel. One of them even lives in Israel. Israelov, right? Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Let me pull this up. Just bear with me. Okay. So this is Chris Minahan, who's a great follow on X. His account is Libs. What is it? Info Lib News on X. Okay. And I'm waiting for that to load. He did a great little write-up on this that I want to read. While we're waiting for that to load, I will go to the Badlands Substack, which I already pulled up. Somewhere I pulled it up, because I wrote about this on the Substack this morning. I didn't get to all of these connections. I really just wrote more about what he had written. I don't know why this is taking so long to load. Okay, so I can go ahead and at least there's a video that I wanted to play that I will go ahead and play. I can play it from the Substack, and so here's the special agent in charge. This is the guy who charged them, Teddy Docks from the FBI, Boston Division. With today's arrest, the FBI has dismantled a large-scale, decade-long international organized criminal network of corporate attorneys and financial professionals who are accused of stealing and trading on material, non-public information from several of our nation's leading law firms, including one right here in Massachusetts. Everyone charged today is accused of scoring significant profits from expected market moves and making out like bandits. That's not merely gaming the system. It's a federal crime. Okay. And the really interesting part is that one of these guys who's involved in this, his name is David Brotslovsky. David Brotslovsky. He is a tech entrepreneur who served as executive director in the past of the U.S.-Israel Business Council and also as an associate for policy and planning at the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. So this guy is a big deal in like the Jewish NGO business world, right? Like he is, these big Jewish organizations that have exceptional power and influence over the government and over just business in general. This guy is a big deal there. Okay. Listen to what he said. This is a lecture he's giving. Eli Talks. I think this is kind of like a TED Talk, but it's like the Jewish version of TED Talk, as I understand it. So he's speaking to a room full of Jewish businessmen, and he's giving them like a TED Talk. Listen to what he says.
Let me ask you, how many of us felt a sense of pride knowing that so many Nobel Prize winners are Jewish?
Oh, wait a minute. Why is this? All right, guys, I don't know what just happened with StreamYard, but I just went back and looked at the screen, and it looked like the original image I was sharing was still sharing, even though I've been flipping around. It was definitely a StreamYard thing. So I had to like unshare my screen, reshare it. I think it should work, but just give me 1 second. All right, let me see if I can. I just want to share with y'all, like, here's the article that I was just reading from the Wall Street Journal, the law firms that appeased Trump and angered their clients. That's the one from June 2025. Yeah, and I apologize. The StreamYard is just very frustrating sometimes. Here is the one from April of 2025. Trump says 5 more law firms agreed to do pro bono work. And I was just reading. There wasn't really any visual to see. And then the only thing I was trying to play was this video, which I didn't get a chance to play yet. But here is this video. So again, this is this Eli Talks like TED Talk thing that this guy did. And again, this is David Brotslovsky, who is involved in these 30 people who were arrested.
Let me ask you, how many of us felt a sense of pride knowing that so many Nobel Prize winners are Jewish? How many of us felt a sense of unease when the Bernie Madoff scandal broke out? Why is that? It's because we instinctively know that we rise together and we fall together, that whether we like it or not, we're all in the same boat. And that means we have to help each other, give to each other, give to fellow Jews. We share. We all move in different circles. It's up to you and me, each and every one of us, to find out how those circles overlap and create opportunities for unity. There's no limit to what you can do if you get into the habit of saying, it's up to me. So I ask you, can we expand our definition of us? Who fits into our community? Yes. Can we teach this value to our children? Yes. Can we focus on who the real enemies are? Yes. Can we work on common goals? Yes. Can we create shared spaces? As a personal responsibility, can each and every one of us say, it's up to me to make this happen? The answer must be a resounding yes. So don't wait for the Spirit to move you. That's not who we are. Take action. Make it a habit to take action, and the feelings of unity will come. So I thank you for coming together today. Let's make it a habit to come together more often. Thank you.
Okay, so what's interesting is, according to Chris Minahan, who does great work in reporting, he claims that this video is from 2013. This is David Brotslovsky. He says Let me see. Brotslovsky in 2013 gave an Eli Talk speech, which is a TED Talk group specifically for Jews, about how Jews need to operate as one people. And the thing that makes that interesting is that if you go and you look at the indictment, it says that this whole thing started. Remember, the guy at the center of it is not Brotslovsky, but it's Nicolo Narothcham, who I guess is friends with Brotslovsky. I've seen a lot of materials that link the two of them. But it says Narothcham started this scheme in 2013. So the same year this guy gave this speech, and 13 years ago, this whole scheme that these guys just got arrested for started. And here's the Brotslovsky saying, hey, we as Jews need to set our differences aside, and we need to basically circle the wagons and identify who the real enemies are outside of our community and kind of just work together, right, to achieve great things. And that appears to be what this little circle of people are doing in this money launder, or in this insider trading scheme is, because it's attorneys, bankers, financiers, etc., working together. And so here is a site called Jewish News Syndicate. This is a pro-Jewish, Jewish media outlet. This is not like a anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist outlet. This is pro. And so their headline on this is by Mike Wagenheim. Said their headline on this story is Jews among group indicted for insider trading allegedly used going to Israel as code for illegal sales. And so this guy has dug into this. This guy, Mike Wagenheim, has dug into this far more than I have at this point. And he says the network used burner phone. Now he says that one of them fled to Israel. He said the guy who lives in Israel, or he says one of these people fled to Israel. That's what is written right here. It says 2 unsealed complaints accuse the group of reaping tens of millions of dollars by using confidential information on mergers and acquisition deals through law firms where scheme leaders were employed. Conspirators allegedly passed information on to business associates, friends, and relatives for trading purposes. The network used burner phones, coded language, and falsified research documents. Prosecutors allege the group also allegedly used "quote unquote" going to Israel tomorrow and phrases about flight departures as code to share timelines related to illegal activities. And then let me see. It says more than a dozen Jews, including one believed to have fled to Israel, are among 30 people charged in an alleged decade-long insider trading scheme run out of law firms. Says David Brotslovsky, a tech entrepreneur who more than a decade ago served as executive director of the U.S.-Israel Business Council and as associate for policy and planning at the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, is alleged to have traded on inside information and then provided kickbacks to Nicolo Narothcham. So that means Brotslovsky would have been one of these bankers or financiers that was buying the securities, head of the operation and college friend. So I guess they went to Yale together, assuming that Narothcham went to Yale for undergrad. Narothcham, a corporate attorney who had worked at several large law firms, and New York lawyer Robert Yadgaroff are accused of being at the center of the scheme. The two allegedly recruited lawyers and others as inside information sources in return for large sums of cash, with tips from the two passed on to traders, the department alleges. Narothcham's brother Lorenzo was also charged. 3 brothers, Brian, Mike, and Simon Finsterbzob, and Simon's brother-in-law, Joseph Suskind, were also hit with charges, as were Suskind's relatives, Yisrael Horowitz and Gavriel Silverstein. So these people, according to this outlet, which again is a pro-Jewish outlet, they even have a whole they even have a whole section here called anti-Semitism and a whole another section called Jewish life. They're saying that these people are all related. So they've run down this information, I assume. Simon Finsterzob's co-worker, Eliyahu Kavian, and friends Baruch Hatanian and Joseph Itzhak are also listed as defendants, as is Kavian's brother Daniel. Quote, the trading on unannounced financial news alleged here. And then we've already read that. So this is pretty interesting. I mean, again, it sounds like this is somewhat of a family affair. These guys all know each other. There's like direct connections, both, there's family, there's in-laws. One of these security traders or bankers, whatever he is, Brotslovsky, gave a speech when this whole thing started, being like, hey guys, we got to set aside our differences and work together as Jews to achieve greater things. And then they went out and recruited all these guys who appear to be from the Jewish community to help them do this. This is all very interesting, and here's why. Number one, the fact that this group is being brought down could just be the start of something bigger. I mean, if they were doing this, who knows what else they were doing, right? They could provide information to the authorities on other similar type of networks that are operating internationally. It also kind of vindicates, at least partially, the idea that like Kash Patel and the Trump administration are in Israel's pocket, or are quote unquote Jewish puppets, which is what a lot of people like to say. If they're taking down networks like this, that's pretty interesting. Because that kind of flies in the face of those allegations. So we'll see what comes of it. But I mean, as of right now, this is interesting. This is interesting. So, all right, all right, hold on one sec. All right, so let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll reset. We'll get into some actual geopolitical news. This is Geopolitics with Ghosts. Getting back.
Last winter, the world met Madame Margie, the moistureless. But while Badlandia banded together at Gart, she evolved. While deep in her layer, she uncovered 4 sacred instruments of hydration. The lip balm, the lotion, the tallow bar, and the new stainless steel gua sha. Together, they wage war. Flaking has fallen, roughness retreats, dryness trembles, and among the rebels, Mother's good boy. But elsewhere in Badlandia, rebellion grows, the beards remain.
Shave them all off.
Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Mama's Boy for 20% off your Mother's Day bundle. Can't choose the right sacred instruments for your mother? Offer them all with an e-gift card. For softness, for victory, for moms.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA.
If your meat comes from the grocery store, do you know its story? Probably not. Big packers, big subsidies, and cheap feed. At Rattlesnake, every steak, every bite is traceable, pasture-raised beef, clean chicken, honest, no government handouts. That's real protein. That's how you fight back. Go to rattlesnakemeats.com/Badlands, promo code Badlands, and taste the difference. Order today, and it ships Monday or Tuesday. That's rattlesnakemeats.com/Badlands. Ready to upgrade your daily routine with truly clean natural products? No exceptions. Start in the kitchen with Van Man's Pure Cooking Tallow, perfect for high heat cooking and adding rich, clean flavor to your meals. For your daily cleanse, try their gentle tallow soaps, the classic honey, pine tar, or coconut. These bars deliver a rich, natural lather that leaves your skin feeling clean, soft, and refreshed. Give your smile real care with Miracle Tooth Powder and flavors like mint bone, Cinnabon, or Original. Customers rave about whiter, stronger teeth and fresher breath with no harsh chemicals. Van Man also offers great products like hair care, eye cream, and more, all made with clean, natural ingredients, no exceptions. Right now, enjoy free U.S. shipping on orders over $40. Head to badlandsmedia.tv/vanman today. That's badlandsmedia.tv/vanman. All right, welcome back to the show, Geopolitics with Ghost. This is hour 2. Before we get rolling, I just want to talk to you about GART. We got GART 12 coming up. Today is May 8th, 2026, by the way. Let's see. GART Deadwood. June 25th through 28th, Badlands Media is heading back to Deadwood, South Dakota for the 12th stop on the Great American Restoration Tour. Whether you're attending in person or virtually, a GART veteran or virgin, there's something for everyone. Early bird prices for virtual tickets are available through May 15th. Merch packages are now also available for both in-person or virtual ticket holders. Get your GART 12 tickets today at badlandsmedia.tv/events. And yes, GART's always a great time. Always love seeing people there. Shout out to everyone in the audience who we saw in Nashville. Look forward to seeing everyone at Deadwood. This is the 3rd time we're going to Deadwood, and it's always been a blast so far. So if you can't join us in person, try to join us virtually. Get signed up to the Telegram chat, and look forward to seeing all of you there. All right, so now let's go back to the news. All right, so again, there's another story domestically. There's 2 actually domestic stories that I want to hit. One of them is the Gabbard investigation. So Tulsi Gabbard examines claims intelligence agencies concealed the 2020 election threat evidence. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, maybe it's a little bigger, has launched an investigation into allegations that intelligence agencies concealed evidence of foreign election threats during the 2020 election cycle, including claims involving China and Venezuela, according to unclassified memos reviewed by Just the News. The documents show Gabbard's now disbanded Directors Initiative Group learned of whistleblower allegations during a broader review conducted last year, including claims that intelligence officials downplayed or omitted information about Chinese election interference from final assessments, congressional briefings, and the president's daily brief. The material was recently referred to Intelligence Community Inspector General Christopher Fox for further review and possible declassification. The memos allege the National Intelligence Council concluded in 2020 that China had accessed multiple state voter registration databases with estimates ranging from 12 to 18 states, far beyond what was previously disclosed publicly. Former National Intelligence Cyber Officer Christopher Porter reportedly raised internal concerns about how intelligence related to China's activities was handled. The memos also cited concerns involving Venezuela-linked election infrastructure and alleged some intelligence officials withheld, de-emphasized, or omitted foreign interference findings because they believed public disclosure could potentially benefit President Trump. Emails cited in the memos reportedly show efforts to alter briefing materials intended for President Trump and pressure CIA analysts to revise records were connected to discussions about Chinese election interference. A previously uncovered 2020 raw intelligence report alleging China produced fraudulent U.S. driver's licenses intended to facilitate fraudulent mail-in voting for then-candidate Joe Biden was later recalled, with agencies instructed to delete the information before a full investigation was conducted. Former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe stated in early 2021 that intelligence analysts faced political pressure regarding assessments of China's interference efforts. A report submitted to the Senate Intelligence Committee by Intelligence Ombudsman Barry Zuluf concluded some analysts appeared reluctant to elevate evidence tied to China because of disagreements with Trump administration policies. All right. Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, if you're familiar with John Harold's Devolution series, he documents that I think it was December 17th, December 16th, John Ratcliffe delivered a report to President Trump that stated that China, or delivered a report about the election to President Trump, and then he subsequently published an article that said, it was like an op-ed that said that China was involved in the election interference, like they interfered in the election. So this all is consistent with John's research. And then the fact that you had intelligence officials hiding this information from the public speaks to a ton of corruption and just, treason, frankly. So we'll see what comes of this, but this is kind of consistent with what we heard from Joe Kinn about the Charlie Kirk thing, that a lot of these intelligence officials were trying to suppress allegations of foreign involvement or leads that would implicate foreign involvement in Charlie Kirk's assassination. So we'll see what comes of it. I mean, this is not new information for this audience, for us, right? It's great that it's going public, and I hope it all gets declassified, and I hope that the declassification brings in new information. But it's not exactly breaking news for this specific audience. On the subject of corruption, I'll probably try to talk about this more on Tuesday with Brian on Badlands Daily, but I won't spend a ton of time on it here. But the FBI raiding the Virginia lawmaker's office in the corruption marijuana probe. What's interesting about this? So this is Louise Lucas, Virginia senator. Not only is she a Virginia senator, she is the president of the Senate. So she is the leader. She's the top senator in the Virginia Senate. Okay. She's also a close ally of Abigail Spanberger, the current governor, CIA soccer mom. She campaigned for her last year in the 2025 election. It says right here, agents executed a court-authorized search warrants Wednesday at Lucas's Portsmouth office. Federal agents also searched a cannabis dispensary believed to be connected to her as part of the ongoing investigation. I do have a clip that we can watch. It's Fox News, so apologize for that, but it is what it is. Let's see if I can make this bigger.
Here telling us today that
it's low quality, but that's only because I made it low quality so I could get it in the news brief and not have it crash out. So forgive me on that.
are court-authorized criminal search warrants that they are issuing. They're going into the building behind me. This is the office here in Portsmouth of State Senator Louise Lucas. You can likely see some of the FBI agents behind me. All of the staffers inside this building were told to come outside. I could hear them saying that they were not allowed back in the building. Throughout the last hour, we've been seeing the FBI come and go carrying boxes out of the building. Now, just across the parking lot next to where I am, there is a cannabis dispensary. We know that the state senator is associated with several cannabis locations and dispensaries. And what we're seeing there, a completely different scene carrying out. SWAT teams arrived with their weapons drawn, telling anyone in the building to come out of the building with their hands up. We also saw at least 3 people being taken away, taken into custody. First, they were put in handcuffs, put on the ground, and then they were taken away. So it's a slightly less large presence than we did see earlier, but there still is a good amount of FBI agents still here on the ground. Also, what happened within the last hour, the Senator Louise Lucas arrived here herself. I was able to speak with her. I asked her what her reaction was to all of this. She told me she had no idea what they were doing here. I asked her about the different locations that they might be. She, in response, asked me what locations the FBI were at today. We know, according to officials, at least 10 locations are being looked at today.
Yeah, so we'll see what comes of all this, but this is this could be the beginning of something big in Virginia. There are a few other concurrent. Let me pull up the news brief again, because there are a few concurrent stories on this. There seems to be some operations occurring in the Commonwealth of Virginia against some of these corrupt individuals. So there's that one. That's this woman, Louise Lucas. It does appear, based on the stuff that people are posting online, that this might be like the Minnesota Somalia thing, that kind of grift, like the nursing home stuff. Partially, it could be that kind of operation in Virginia. We'll wait and see. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time digging deep into it until we know more. There's this, though. The Justice Department, the same day, launches this was on Wednesday, launched an investigation into Fairfax County prosecutor Steve Descano. And so Descano is accused of offering preferential treatment to migrants. He's allowed a number of violent offenders, rapists, murderers to serve minimal jail time or none at all. You know, like 30 days in jail, 90 days in jail. I've seen, and which is outrageous. Like everyone. I don't think he was the guy who was involved in. There was a prosecutor up there in Fairfax, who, if you recall, remember the kid who was like raped the girl or molested the girl. He was a transvestite, and he went to the girl's bathroom, and then the school like quietly moved the kid to a different school, right? And nothing happened to him. And then the father showed up to a school board meeting and was like physically beaten by the police and dragged out of there because this is the girl's father demanding answers. And then they tried to charge him with something that was all dropped later. They then opened an investigation. This is Jason Miyares, who was the Commonwealth attorney, or I'm sorry, the attorney general under Governor Youngkin. He brought charges against the school board or like the school system for doing this, and then later dropped the charges. I was so pissed about that when I quietly dropped all these charges one after another, incrementally until nothing happened to the school board, nothing happened to the school superintendent who did it. It was all a bunch of nonsense, and just goes to show how corrupt. I mean, Virginia is a cesspool of corruption, and the Republican Party is absolutely in on it. So I am excited to see this happen. I do have a personal stake in this. You can go to the Badlands news brief to Thursday's edition to read about it. I kind of spell out the story, but the TLDR is just that what they're describing here with a corrupt prosecutor working with criminals to give them plea deals where they plead they plead guilty. The prosecutor gets a feather in his cap, yep, I got a conviction right there. And then the criminal serves minimal time, if any time at all, and then gets off immediately. That actually happened in my family with my brother's murder. The guy got caught doing it, the prosecutor, and long story, but we ended up getting justice. We ended up getting I got the guy's law license taken away, his pension taken away, he was humiliated in the subsequent election. He got 14% of the vote as the incumbent. These are elections where there's a couple thousand people voting, so I think they're kind of hard to rig. Very, very small, tiny counties. But point is that my family filed a lawsuit against the government of Virginia, demanding that this guy get removed because he was exposed in court by the judge for lying to everybody about what he was doing as prosecutor. And so the judge rejected the plea deal, even though all sides agreed to it. In this really dramatic moment, he recused himself. The judge did. That this new judge got appointed. We filed this lawsuit demanding that the Commonwealth remove the prosecutor from the case, and had an attorney go in there and argue an amazing presentation argument for why this should happen. He told us going into it, he's like, I don't think this is going to work because the Virginia Constitution is very clear that Commonwealth attorneys do not answer to anybody, including the governor, which is unlike every other state where the governor can remove prosecutors from cases where there's a conflict of interest. We saw that in the Jesse Smollett case. That's not the case in Virginia. They can be as corrupt as they possibly want. They could be in bed with the cartels and openly operating with the cartels. And nobody in the state can remove them. Now the FBI could come in and arrest them in those cases, right? Which is what might happen here. But in terms of the state power, there is no state power to remove a corrupt prosecutor from openly engaging in corruption. It's pretty awful. Yeah, I mean, it's disgusting. And so the judge begrudgingly ruled against us. That is now case law. I know for a fact that that's being taught now in the ethics courses at William and Mary and other law schools around the state. I know that because the professors have come and interviewed us about it to get more information to make sure that their curriculum was accurate. And they were just as blown away by this as anybody else. But that is case law now in Virginia, that the government has no authority to remove a corrupt prosecutor from a case, no matter how much conflict of interest is clearly there. And so I'm glad to see the FBI do this and come down. And I hope Kash Patel really turns this guy's life inside out and exposes all this stuff. One thing that I wasn't aware of, this is a little tragic. I mean, it's very tragic, but a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Justin Fairfax killed his wife and himself. And if y'all remember who Justin Fairfax is, he was the lieutenant governor under Ralph Northam. Ralph Northam was the governor of Virginia in Trump's first term, who famously got on the radio and talked about killing newborn babies if the mother decided during delivery that she wanted to abort the baby. And he was like, we'll make the baby comfortable. We'll have a conversation with the mother. If we want to kill it, we'll kill it. Right. Justin Fairfax was his lieutenant governor. I don't know any details about this. I was just kind of surprised to read about it. He was all these people I'm describing here are Democrats. They all, I assume, know one another. And this could have nothing to do with any corruption or anything like that. But apparently he shot his wife and then he shot himself. That's the official story. And I don't know any other details. Other than that, they say it was a very chaotic murder-suicide scene. It could have nothing to do with government corruption, but it's very strange. This guy was like a rising star. He was expected to run for governor after Ralph Northam. I don't know what happened. So anyway, there's a lot of strange stuff happening in Virginia, and I can't really make sense of any of it at the moment. Okay, so now let's go to the other story that I wanted to cover. I know we're doing a lot of like domestic stuff today on a geopolitical show, but I think this is all involved. This is all connected to like this international cartel that obviously controls our government. And there's no better story to talk about that than this one. Trump signs new counterterrorism strategy targeting cartels and hemispheric threats. And I actually went and pulled this. Where is it? I went and pulled the counterterrorism strategy right here. Let me just read through it. It says, President Trump signed a new national counterterrorism strategy that expands federal focus on cartel networks, hemispheric threats, and domestic extremist groups, according to White House counterterrorism director Sebastian Gorka. Gorka said Trump signed the strategy Tuesday, describing it as centered on protecting the United States as a homeland priority. The plan to prioritize the neutralization of cartel operations aimed at disrupting drug trafficking, human smuggling, and related networks before they reach the U.S. The strategy also directs federal agencies to identify and track violent political organizations with anti-American ideology, including Antifa. He said authorities will map networks and affiliations and use law enforcement tools to disrupt operations before violence occurs. U.S. officials will meet with allies this week to coordinate counterterrorism efforts with a focus on Iran-linked threats in the Strait of Hormuz region. The strategy also maintains continued pressure on global jihadist operations, including Al-Qaeda. Now, pulling up the counterterrorism strategy, right here on page 10, it says our hemisphere. So this is the section on our hemisphere. And it talks about returning to common sense, going after the cartels. With Operation Absolute Resolve, President Trump took action where so many presidents had not. In a textbook special operations mission in support of federal law enforcement, the illegitimate leader of Venezuela, a cartel boss in league with terror sponsor Iran and its proxy Hezbollah, was apprehended and brought to the United States to face justice for his crimes against Americans. The connections between the cartels and jihadi networks or terrorism are rooted in the massive drug revenues that fund terrorist organizations and transnational criminal networks and enable their operations against the United States. Operation Absolute Resolve proves that the Trump corollary, the blueprint for a modern Monroe Doctrine, is already in the reality in our hemisphere. We will continue to our military and law enforcement campaigns against all the cartels and gangs designated as terrorist organizations by the president. At the same time, we will continue to target their finances and precursor supply lines to cripple their means of production in the movement of profits. We will do so in concert with local governments when they are willing and able to work with us. If they cannot or will not, we will still take whatever action is necessary to protect our country, especially if the government in question is complicit with the cartels. Under President Trump, the United States will continue to dismantle the cartel networks and disrupt their recruiting and funding streams until they are neutralized and the regimes who help them are no longer able to do so. So what's interesting about that is that I mean, that speaks to what just happened in Mexico, right? Because they use Venezuela as like the stalking horse, as like the example, but nobody in Venezuela has been arrested outside of Maduro, who, I'm not even certain that his arrest is legitimate, like that, like he's actually, quote unquote under arrest. We didn't see like mid-level governor level leaders, political leaders in Venezuela get arrested and or indicted and accused of like working with the cartels. We have seen that all over the place in Mexico. And so let's just do a quick check in on Mexico and where that currently stands. And so here is from CBS News. State Department reviewing all Mexican consulates in the U.S. as tensions grow. The State Department is initiating a review of all 53 Mexican consulates operating in the United States, a U.S. official told CBS News on Thursday, in a move that could lead Secretary of State Marco Rubio to consider ordering the closure of some diplomatic offices. The review comes as bilateral tensions build over security cooperation and cartel violence, and it follows the deaths of 2 American CIA officers after a counter-narcotics operation in northern Mexico last month. A State Department official said the review is part of a broader effort to align U.S. foreign policy with the Trump administration's priorities. Dylan Johnson, Assistant Secretary of State for Global Public Affairs, said the Department of State is constantly reviewing all aspects of American foreign relations to ensure that they are in line with the president's America First foreign policy agenda and advance American interests. Mexico maintains the largest foreign consular network in the United States, with offices that provide documentation and legal aid to millions of Mexican citizens living across the country. Most are concentrated in border states and cities with large Mexican-American populations, including California, Texas, and Arizona. In recent years, U.S. consulate closures have usually reflected rising tensions with rival countries rather than routine diplomatic changes. In 2020, as relations between Washington and Beijing worsened, the Trump administration ordered China's consulate in Houston to be closed, citing concerns over espionage and intellectual property theft. In 2017, the U.S. ordered Russia to close its consulate in San Francisco, along with diplomatic facilities in Washington and New York, in response to Moscow expelling American diplomats. Tensions between the U.S. and Mexico spiked last month following the death of 2 American officials, later confirmed by CBS News to have been working for the CIA, who died alongside 2 Mexican investigators after their vehicle crashed into a remote mountain region where authorities were targeting suspected drug laboratories. U.S. Ambassador to Mexico Ronald Johnson announced the death of 2 embassy staff members in a post on X on April 19th. The operation quickly stoked political controversy after Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said the American officers may not have had authorization from the federal government to operate in the country and publicly demanded explanations from the Trump administration. The dispute has widened in recent days as the U.S. announced drug trafficking and weapons charges against top Mexican political figures and issued multiple extradition requests, including one for Sinaloa Governor Ruben Rocha Moya. Sheinbaum said this week that Mexico's foreign ministry sent a diplomatic note to Washington requesting evidence from the U.S. Justice Department regarding the allegations against Rocha and other senior officials, saying Mexico's Attorney General's office would investigate if credible evidence was provided. Rocha denied the accusations, calling them false, and said he would temporarily leave office to focus on his defense and cooperate with Mexican authorities as the case proceeds. The U.S. Embassy in Mexico later said combating corruption and transnational organized crime remains a shared priority for both governments. While declining to comment on the specific allegations, the embassy said corruption that enables organized crime will be investigated and prosecuted wherever U.S. jurisdiction applies. So this is just more of the same. And Claudia Sheinbaum is really putting herself in a tough spot here, because she's saying that she will only comply if irrefutable evidence is given to her. And it sounds like what she wants to do is she wants to actually go arrest this guy and prosecute him in the Mexican judicial system, as if that would actually be a good idea. yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. And clearly she is a cartel politician. You can see over here in the margin that a Jalisco cartel leader was pulled out of a ditch in hiding recently, the other day, by U.S. authorities. So anyway, and also the Virginia Supreme Court struck down the redistricting plan, so we're not getting that redistricting plan. I guess that's good news, but elections are still fake and gay. So as long as elections are fake and gay, I will continue to say they are fake and gay until you prove to me they are not fake and gay. All right, let's spend the last few minutes going through some Middle East stuff. Let's see. Excuse me. So we have the UAE. We have going through my history, pulling up these articles. We have sanctions coming from the EU. We have Iran saying it attacked 3 destroyers. And then today we have Iran is supposed to be reviewing their peace deal, the peace deal offer that Trump said that Trump sent to them. We also have the UAE sending $100 million to the border peace. Right here. Okay. So let me just hit a few of these because we're still in very much a holding pattern, I think, when it comes to the Iran stuff. There's a lot of narratives out there about, ships have been hit, ports have been hit. Trump came out and said that, where was his post? He came out and said that right here. 3 world-class American destroyers just transited very successfully out of the Strait of Hormuz under fire. There was no damage done to the 3 destroyers, but great damage done to the Iranian attackers. They were completely destroyed with numerous small boats, which are being used to take place of their fully decapitated Navy. And he just goes on to talk about the boats are at the bottom of the sea quickly and efficiently. Missiles were shot at our destroyers and were easily knocked down. All right, so let me go back to the news brief, because the news brief, I wrote about this yesterday. Okay. So here is Mark Levin freaking out because these stories came out that Saudi Arabia had pressured Trump to shut down Operation or whatever, Project Freedom, whatever that thing was called. Saudi Arabia said, yeah, you can't use our bases, you can't use our airspace. Project Freedom was that operation launched on Monday where Trump said, I'm going to call on all these international or all these foreign countries to bring in their ships, and we're going to together traverse the Strait of Hormuz. He announced it on Sunday. He said it was going to start on Monday, and then on Tuesday he said it's canceled. Of course, Mark Levin's freaking out about all this, citing this article from AOL.com, Trump's abrupt U-turn on plan to reopen Strait of Hormuz. And then, so what I reported on was this. Donald J. Trump, assuming Iran, this is from May 6th, 2 days ago, Wednesday, assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary epic fury will be at an end, and the highly effective blockade will allow the Strait of Hormuz to be open to all, including Iran. If they don't agree, the bombing starts, and it will be sadly at a much higher level and intensity than it has been. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. Now, he posted this at May 6th, Wednesday at 7:41 a.m. 9 minutes before that, it was reported the carrier USS Gerald Ford is now in the Atlantic, and that came from the U.S. Naval Institute, which is a NGO news organization affiliated with the Naval Academy. that's based out of the Naval Academy. So you would assume that they would know better than anybody. And it says aircraft carrier USS Gerald Ford is now operating in the Atlantic Ocean after sailing through the Strait of Gibraltar on Wednesday, according to ship spotters. As of Wednesday, Ford has been deployed for 315 days, the longest carrier strike group deployment since the end of the Cold War. Since the start of the Vietnam War, only USS Coral Sea in 1964 and USS Midway in 1972 have deployed longer for national tasking. Yeah, and then it kind of just goes through the history of why this ship was out at sea for so long. It cites it was originally deployed, decided to be deployed last summer during the 12-day war. It went to the Middle East. It then went to Oslo for some pre-scheduled NATO exercises, joint NATO exercises. Then it went to the Caribbean to help in October to help with the Maduro thing, right? And then it was then recalled in January back to the Middle East. And at that point, it had already reached its 8-month deployment. And then it sat in the Middle East since then. It's had a few issues. It's had to go for repairs, I think, in Greece and I think in Cyprus. Here's a picture that they include in the article of the USS Gerald Ford crossing westbound the Strait of Gibraltar. And so what I pointed out in my, I went and did like the research. What I pointed out in my take on Wednesday is that, this ship supposedly travels between 20 and 25 knots in the Mediterranean, just given like the lay of the Mediterranean and the islands and everything. And so if it were to travel from Israel to the Strait of Gibraltar, it would take at least 4 days, if not 5 days, to get there, depending on how fast it's going. But it would take at least 3 at the fastest it can travel. It would take 3.5 days. Okay. So basically 4 days. And this picture was posted at 7:08 a.m. Wednesday morning. Okay. So if you go back 4 days, the earliest or the latest rather, it could have left port in order to make it there would have been Saturday night. Saturday night, it would have left Israel. My guess is it probably left Friday or Saturday morning. It probably left Israel. And then here it is Wednesday morning crossing the Strait of Gibraltar, which is, where Spain and Africa meet. And then Sunday is the day that Trump comes out and says, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this Project Freedom thing. The reason that I don't buy that is that like I think the whole Project Freedom thing must have just been a narrative deployment. Why would President Trump come out and like apply maximum pressure and say, we've really got these guys by the short hairs when his biggest this is the largest ship in the world, the largest aircraft carrier in the world. Our biggest aircraft carrier just left the Middle East. The Iranians surely would have known that because the Chinese and the Russians would have told them that with using their satellites. At that point, even if you're going to send in they said the George Bush is coming to relieve it. But even if you're sending in new aircraft carriers and new ships, you've lost your biggest aircraft carrier. Like, that's a concession right there. You would keep these guys, I would think, planted in place until the negotiations conclude, especially if Trump is out there saying, yeah, we're about to negotiate this thing. This thing's about to be done any day now. Why would you then pull these guys? My guess is the deal's already done. Like, we're just getting a lot of like back and forth narrative stuff. Both sides are saying that the ceasefire is still in effect, even though they're claiming to be bombing each other. The UAE has been hit a ton this week, which kind of speaks to some of the stuff we were going over on Tuesday. Here's the UAE sending the Board of Peace $100 million for a training of a new Gaza police force. Let's see. The EU is moving toward implementing sanctions on Israeli West Bank settlements. The ambassador confirms. So we could see sanctions. They're scheduled to meet in 3 days to discuss that. So I guess Monday or Tuesday they're going to meet. Yeah, Monday they're going to meet to discuss sanctions. So if the EU sanctions Israel, that's going to be very, very interesting. We'll see what happens there. That's just going to further increase the divide between Europe and Israel. Interesting stuff. All right. So, and then I'm sorry. The UAE and Saudi, like this rift that we were discussing the other day is like really growing, and we're like in exacerbation there. And I wonder if this is just a replay of the Qatar thing that happened in 2017. We talked about this on Tuesday. All right, guys, I got to wrap up because it's like 2:56 now, and I got to let this like stream load up so that we can reload it to start the show at 3. Hit the thumbs up. Have a great weekend. We will see y'all back here on Tuesday. Monday night, I'm going to have Jordan Sather on the Book of Trump. We're going to be doing the Rockefellers, and there's a ton of stuff there that connects to like the modern zeitgeist from the Rockefellers. So. See y'all there. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day, by the way, to all the mothers out there. And we will see you Monday and Tuesday. This is Geopolitics with the Ghost.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.